Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at thedove.us. Okay, welcome back. Great to have back with us in the studio today Dave Dotterrer. He is a candidate for the Republican position of he is the Republican candidate, excuse me, for the state Senate here in Southern Oregon, and he's up against now a Democratic incumbent, Alan Bates. Dave, good to see you back. And how's it going, by the way? You say 6,000 doors you've knocked on?
Yeah, just 6,000 plus doors I've knocked on already, and my wife has gone with me on most of them.
Really?
And it's been very eye-opening to talk to people and see what's really on their mind.
Wow.
Yeah. So
quite an experience.
Yeah, it is. Well, you know, it's funny. You get the chance to you live in a community, and you go into lots of different neighborhoods that you just wouldn't necessarily drive through for whatever reason. You just if you live in a particular area and you have this route, you go to Costco, all that kind of stuff. You just don't go with them. It's really interesting, and you get to meet a lot of different people that you wouldn't otherwise normally meet.
What's the #1 complaint?
The biggest issue is jobs. Just to tell you a little story, I went to a door the other night, and there was a young man came out, mid-20s, and I'll tell you one thing is very, very clear: the young people are really starting to pay attention. I noticed in the last campaign when I was walking doors, the 20-somethings, yeah, they were nice and everything, but they weren't as engaged as you would think. This time they're really engaged because they see what's happening. So I go to the door and I ask this guy, well, so how are things around with the job issues? Perry, the guy, he teared up.
Really?
I mean, his eyes welled up, and he said, "It's really been tough the last couple of years." And you'll see that in what we don't realize in Jackson County. I just saw the employment report, and it says that in the last year, the number of employed people in Jackson County has actually gone down, not up, down. And the only reason our unemployment rate's gone down is because 2,000 people have left the workforce. So we're really seeing some problems here, and what people are basically saying is that I don't see Salem doing anything to help us out here.
Wow. All right. Well, let's go over to Cover Oregon just for a moment. Big news, as you know. They finally waved the white flag and going to send it back to the feds.
Yeah.
I guess the first thought that I have, does that preempt the investigation?
No, not at all. I mean, the FBI is still moving forward with their investigation, and they've subpoenaed people. And I just saw the other day that Carol Lawson, who was one of the people that who's been quote accused of doing all these bad things, is working a lawsuit against the state for defamation of character. I mean, she basically is saying, "Look, I was a good soldier. You told me to say these things. I said these good things,
wow.
and now you're blaming me for it,
yeah,
and everything." So, but I was the good soldier. So
wow.
it's pretty eye-opening. I mean, I've actually read the letter from her lawyer to the state of Oregon, and it's eye-opening.
Wow, still a mess. In fact, we had a report the other day that that they were still giving raises within the system to people sitting around doing nothing, to a system that was broken that can't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, the people are saying, like my opponent has said, well, these people have been fired and they've been held accountable. That's not true. That's just not true. I mean, for example, some of the people that are working on it, they were allowed to keep their jobs to the end of June. And they were, the director of Cover Oregon was allowed to keep his job through the end of June, getting paid $14,000 a month. And even though he'd been, quote, laid off a couple months before, well, he's retiring, and he's moving on. It's a pretty cushy deal. Pretty cushy deal for some of these folks.
All right, so what can we do to bring jobs back to Oregon?
Well, I've been sitting down with lots of the different business groups and talking with them about what are what's the low-hanging fruit out there. What are the things that we really need to stop doing, and what are the things we need to do to bring jobs? And let me say this, that it's not about jobs necessarily at Oregon. Oregon's not doing that badly as a state. It's the rural areas that are doing poorly. The question is, we spend most of our economic development money up in the Portland area. It's not being spent, and we do have programs out there. They're not being instituted in areas like Medford, and there's actually places in Eastern Oregon that are worse off than we are. it's the rural versus urban. I can actually, you know, the income inequality in Oregon is not between rich and poor. It's between urban and rural. That's really true.
Wow.
So,
all right. So, what is the low-hanging fruit? What are you discovering?
well, some of the things happen to do with land use. We really need to take a look at the way we do land use planning in this state, because what happens is we have this massive state process for doing it, and one size fits all. And it tends to do pretty well for the people up in Portland, but it doesn't work for people in the rural areas. So we really need to give more flexibility in that area. I can tell you that I talked with some folks that were with a small business group, the National Federation of Independent Businesses. That's one of their small business group, and what they basically said was this: you know, it's not any single regulation. It's this broad network and this patchwork of regulations that we've put together that get you stuck in a sticky spider web of regulation. It's just one thing after another. And what this woman said to me was, what you really need to do is go back in and look at your totality of your regulations and ask yourself, okay, are all these really necessary? Because they're often working at counter purposes. So, you know, people say, well, how come you can't come up with that? You know, what's the one thing you could do? Well, you can't do it. It's not that simple. It really is not that simple.
Well, what little I've run into with our new building and things, it's just been amazing.
Really? I mean, so you're feeling it,
well,
aren't you?
It's amazing. I mean, we're small scale, obviously, compared to companies who want to literally pick up and move here. And I know that there's some incentive programs out there to bring companies into the area and all that. But just to get to the maze of a city and a council and a county is enough to, you kind of go, well, wait a minute, who really is in control? Is it territorial? What's the issue here? Why can't we make getting things done simple?
Yeah, and people think that that's a local issue. Yeah. Actually, it flows from state statute, because there's these state statutes that talk about that local governments, local entities have to have certain processes in place to make sure the following things happen. Well, that's all they're doing. They're responding to what the state has directed them to do. Now, it's very easy to blame them, but they're just doing what they're told also, because it's state law.
All right, so businesses, obviously, you get businesses fired up, they're going to employ people. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. Education continues to get all of the attention and the dollars. Does education have enough money, in your opinion? Do we need to give it any more money?
You know, I think that we're going to have to be very careful about how we hand out that money, but we made a big change this time around to say they have enough money. I think that at the K-12 level it was addressed this last time, and it was bipartisan to increase the K-12 funding. I will tell you where I think the real problem is at the community college and the associate's degree, and where we transition people into the vocations. That's where most of the jobs are, and that's where we're not putting enough emphasis on it. So I think that you could say, when you talk about money, if it was me, I would put the money into the community colleges, and I would into workforce development kinds of education, because well, for example, the governor has this idea of what he calls pre-K through 20 in the education system. I would make that pre-K through a job, because that's really what you want. Is you want somebody to come out of your education system, and you want them to have gotten either a vocational training or college level, or even if it's just a high school degree, to move on into a job. And we don't do that very well. So
what were some of the other concerns you ran into out there?
Well, it's very, very clear that, at least amongst people who would support someone like me, that you know, you got to be very careful using the word change these days. But I can tell you, there's a lot of people out there do not like the direction we're going.
Hope and change.
Yeah, and they don't use those words, but they say, look, we're just heading in the wrong direction. And I say, well, do you think we're headed in the wrong direction, or do you think we're in a downward spiral? They say, you know what? I think we are in a downward spiral. There's a difference between that. If you're 20 degrees off, and that's a rudder bearing. But I got to tell you, you start looking at economically and where this country is and this area is, and you start to see this downward spiral piece, talking about the jobs that we just talked about. when I met with the teachers, and I've met with a bunch of the teachers and all, they'll talk about the fact that the biggest problem they have is with the socioeconomic conditions in this area and what that means to a child when they come to school. Are they prepared to learn? But it goes back to the socioeconomic. So you start to connect these dots between, wait a minute, we have these issues that are going on with education, but it ties back to, do the parents have a job? Do they have a stable home? And all that cultural and socioeconomic issues that come around. We've got to address this in its totality. And I'm not seeing the legislature do that. They're not very good at that. I mean, they throw a bunch of bills in the hopper, and people talk about what they're going to fix, but it doesn't do. It doesn't. There's not a strategy and a plan behind it.
Can some of these agencies be looked at and saying, wait a minute, they're just too fat?
Oh yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
Whatever happened to administrative overrule? Is that a real possibility?
Well, you know, it was interesting because there was at one point there was a juncture between conservatives and, believe it or not, the public employees unions, and the discussion was that we have too many middle managers in these agencies. Now, of course, the public employees unions wanted to do with middle managers because that was taking away money from their workers, and of course the conservatives are saying, look, we're just too top heavy. And we dug into it and came up with some solutions. Well, that was a couple of years ago. We're finding out that it is really difficult to do because there's only so much the legislature can do under the Constitution. What it really takes is it takes the governor saying, wait a minute, I'm the chief executive officer here. This is what we're going to do. And that's a governor's issue. And that's why voting for the governor is so important. Okay. Yeah.
Well, how can people get a hold of you and work with you if they want to?
Well, theDotterrer.com. I get is the website, and you can go on there. And when I go to the doors, lots of people say, "Yep, I'll take a sign." People are signing up to walk with me in the Ashland Parade this Friday. We're gonna do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's always an interest. That's always an interesting issue.
Give it a shot.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I did it 4 years ago, and it was a lot of fun.
That's Dotterrer. Okay, Dotterrer. theDotterrer.com. And if you want to get involved in this campaign, well, keep up the good work. Things I'm sure will be a little dormant here for a while, but it'll heat up probably.
It'll heat up. Yep,
real
absolutely.
fast.
Come fall.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay, we'll be right back.